And I want to invite you to enter into the chat where you're from, and anything else that you feel like you'd like to share to introduce who you are, where you are on the planet. All of that is welcome as we get to know each other a little bit in this space. All right, so it's my job to do introductions and get us kind of started. So I'm going to get back to my agenda here. We're going to introduce our speakers. First of all, I want to introduce Laura. So Laura Baumgartner is the pastor of Haller Lake at the United Methodist Church in Haller Lake in Seattle, Washington. She also serves as the chair of the board of Earth Ministry, which is the Washington affiliate for Interfaith Power and Light. Laura's experience in the environmental field includes the publication of several courses and articles, and recently a primer on the PFAS chemicals, those forever chemicals in waterways, and that was fall 2019 edition of Earth Letter. Laura also loves to be outside and doing all those outside things that we all love to do, and often stirs our love for nature. Jenny Phillips is not here yet. She has, like many people, a full schedule, but she is going to be jumping in before long, and we're going to be really glad to have her join us. But I'm going to give a little introduction now. So Reverend Jenny Phillips is Senior Technical Advisor for the Environmental Sustainability and Global Ministries and is an elder in the PNW Conference of the United Methodist Church. Jenny has written worship and education resources for the American Bible Society, Chalice Press, Eco Justice Ministries, Global Ministries, Green Faith, and a lot of other things. She also loves to be out in the world. Don't we all love that? Doing things in the green. And Jenny is also not a leader in the Earth Keepers movement. So if you want to know anything about Earth Keepers, if you would like to perhaps be an Earth Keeper, maybe you are an Earth Keeper and you already know all about Jenny, she's the person to connect with. So I haven't given my full bio, but it's there in the resources. So I encourage you to just do that. I'm connected with Interfaith Power and Light as well in Oregon. And I run a nonprofit, Circle Faith Future, where my role is to look at climate and creation. Okay, so again, I hope folks are using the chat. I should check the chat, see how we're doing. Oh, good. I see
it looks really
things
great.
Going in. Awesome. All right.
Hey, Richenda, before we go too much farther, could you open us with a word of prayer? Would that be okay?
You bet.
Thank you.
Okay, so we've done bios. I want us to consider just how warm it's been. I think there isn't a place in the Pacific Northwest or the Northeast or the Southern US or anywhere that hasn't been really experiencing heat and the concerns that come with heat. That's also been true in Europe. And although it is cold in Australia now, they have also been dealing with heat in their summer times. So I thought we could raise a prayer. The season of creation is a burning bush, but we all know that after a while, the heat of the fires is just too much. So let us pray together. Amazing God, we thank you for the sun. We thank you for every ray of sun that brings life to our planet. We thank you for an atmosphere that holds us gently, the atmosphere, the air through which the Holy Spirit moves. And Lord, we recognize that in the sinful burning of fossil fuels, our atmosphere is struggling to be in balance with the sun as it shines. Our earth is warming, and places on our earth are warming very hot. Amazing God, help us turn. Help us find cool. Help us help those who need shade and respite. Amazing God, you have made us to help our neighbor. We call to you from the warmth of the day, from the warmth of summer, hoping and working toward the coolness of tomorrow with our whole hope and in full spirit in you. Amen. Okay. Let's see I'm going to reorient to my agenda so that I'm good to keep us in our time. I want to talk a little bit about, oh yeah, we have different folks here. Some of us are worship leaders, some of us are preachers, and some of us are here just to learn more about the seasons of creation. And so I was just curious if folks could put a thumbs up if are you clergy or here listening for a clergy person, and that will help us get a sense of kind of who we are gathered here. So I see some thumbs. Are you here's a second question. Are you a worship leader or here listening for a worship team today? Got some thumbs up there. Okay, awesome. And maybe thumbs up if you're just curious what the heck this is about. What is Seasons of Creation? And you just here to learn more about it and get to do that with colleagues. Anybody doing that? Okay, all right. So we have a real mix today then, it looks like, which is great. That's perfect. I love the ones that are here to just get to mix it up with colleagues, because to me, that's the most fun part for sure. Okay, and United Methodist Creation Justice Movement is the entity from which we speak today. So the United Methodist Church doesn't have a lot going for it officially when it comes to creation justice. We have a lot of pieces of things, right? But we don't have like a whole movement that sort of encompasses the denomination. And so this has sort of bubbled up from the ground, which is absolutely marvelous. So Kathy Velasquez Eberhardt and Pat Watkins are two clergy. Pat is clergy person, Kathy is a lay person, who sort of began this idea working with other people who are very interested, especially in the Southeast, to say, let's start a movement. Let's start a denominational movement that is very welcoming, lets people come in and be part of the movement at every level, and let's get going with creation justice in the United Methodist Church. Let's really learn how to talk about that. Let's do that together. Let's do that as friends, colleagues, and Christians together. And so that's the movement. I'm going to drop a link in the chat, which is just a story about Reverend Pat Watkins and Kathy Eberhardt. She can't be here today, unfortunately, but that's okay. I'm going to drop. I'm not able to open it. There it is, the chat. Okay. And that link, it's got a lot in there, so don't worry about doing that right now. We'll tell you more about the movement and how it came to be. Tell us their story. So right now, if you go to umcreationjustice.org, that is where you're going to find what's going on right now. Hold on, I'm going to text that in a little later, umcreationjustice.org. And there's a whole website that's been developed that has resources as well as webinars and all these things to get us on the same page together. I think that's probably enough. I don't want to bore people with all the specifics. So for today, what we're going to do is we're going to have about an hour together. Laura is going to lead us through the bulk of the seasons of creation. This was kind of her brainchild coming together. And then we will have time for some breakout rooms where we can kind of get into a little bit more discussion as colleagues, and then we'll be back to share together. And we are looking forward to a generative time. I know I am, and I'm just so glad that you're all here. So I'm going to turn it over to Reverend Laura.
Thank you, Richenda. It is great to be together. Great to see everyone here. It would really help me to know a little bit more about you. I saw your introductions in the chat, and I kind of have a sense of where we're from across this country. I know that there are some people in other parts of the world who are interested in watching the recording because it is right now the middle of the night for them. So I want to give a big shout out to people who are watching this recording after the fact, and we're glad that you're able to join us in that way as well. I think I also saw a mix that we have of clergy and lay, and so that is wonderful. And also people who are here to learn more about the season. One other question that would really help me is to know how many of you are new to the season of creation this year. How many of you are coming here from churches who have never done the season of creation before? Oh, and I see Jenny just dropping in. Welcome, Jenny. All right, I'm seeing a bunch of hands raised for being new to Season of Creation. Great. And then how many are from churches that have done Season of Creation multiple times in the past? All right, we have a few of those as well. Excellent, wonderful. And Jenny has just been able to join us. Jenny, do you want to say a quick hello? We're just about to dive into some of the resources, but if you want to say hi, feel free.
Okay, cool. Hi, everybody. My name is Jenny Phillips. I work with Global Ministries and their Environmental Sustainability Program, and I know many of your faces from the Earth Keepers program. And I am also a colleague of Laura and Richenda with the Pacific Northwest Conference. So anyway, great to be here. Thanks for the welcome.
Thank you, Jenny. All right. So I think what I will do then, I just put a link in the chat to the resources that we have pulled together. And so you can follow that link. I'm also going to share my screen so that you can see it hopefully on screen. I know for our caller, that's going to be a little bit harder for you to see. So I invite you to let us know if there's any way that we can be helpful. I will read out that URL so that you can find it later if that's useful to you. It's https://um-creation-of-creation-2022 /. So I hope that that is helpful for you to be able to find those resources if they are something that you'd like to access as we move on. So this is a set of resources, like Richenda said, that we have pulled together in the last few weeks. And really our goal was to encourage participation in the season in whatever way that looks for you. So there's no right way or wrong way to participate in the Season of Creation, but we wanted to have something that would be easy for United Methodist congregations and others. It's not limited to United Methodists, although the resources that we've pulled together are made all by United Methodists. So hopefully it's very easy for our congregations to be able to pick this up and run with it. We wanted to lower all the barriers that we could think of to make participation easier. So we are using the materials that we were inspired by the materials that are at the seasonofcreation.org, which is different than seasonsofcreation.com. A little confusing there, but Seasons of Creation or seasonofcreation.org is the organization that is kind of put together in partnership with the Catholic Laudato Si movement and the World Council of Churches. And so we're following the theme there and adding in a whole lot of extra resources for that. So you'll see here that we have it broken down by the weeks. There are 5 weeks in the season this year, and then there are some seasonal resources underneath. So I am thinking that I will just walk through the 5 weeks and give you a little bit of my thinking about the themes and kind of how they came to me and how we've worked with them so far to produce some of these resources. I know that you can mine this for what you need and that you can create more that will be more appropriate to your local congregation. I will say that I encourage you as I'm talking here to add in the chat any ideas that you have so that we can all have the benefit of hearing from each other. And then we will also have the opportunity to talk in some breakout rooms after this time. But as I'm talking, if you have ideas, if you have other examples, you want to share them, please use the chat to do that. And then I also want to say that none of us who were participating in writing these are experts in your local setting. And so we encourage you to find the local resources and the local examples and illustrations that will help you to really bring these themes or other themes that you come up with to life for your congregation. So there's no assumption that you use our themes or not use them. But please be creative with them. They're intended as something to get you started. So for the overall season, the theme that was put forth by seasonofcreation.org is listen to the voice of creation. And the symbol for that is the burning bush. And so that's kind of the beginning of where we started. And so for each week, I've taken the lectionary gospel text and added an Exodus text. So the Exodus texts are non-lectionary. And if that is a challenge for you, I encourage you to use the gospel text. And if your congregation is flexible with the lectionary text and the Exodus ones, that may help you to bring out the idea of the symbol of the burning bush more as well. So for this first week, the theme is really listen to prepare. And so you can think about that in a lot of different ways. Preparing for the season is one way that you might be wanting to think about that, thinking about how we experience the worship time that we have together, or these are also materials that may be useful in small group settings or educational settings. So as we experience our time together as holy ground, what are the ways that we can mark that or symbolize that? If burning bush isn't part of what you do, are there other ways that you might identify that this is holy ground that we're on right now? We might also be preparing for the changes that our environment is undergoing right now. We have lots of them in the news this week with fires and floods and wars. And there are lots of things that people are doing to prepare for that. And so as we think about that first theme, the listen to prepare, we may be listening to the voices of creation by thinking about the changes that are happening environmentally around us and talking about how we prepare for that. And then, of course, we always want to be listening for God's voice as we prepare, God's voice speaking to us through creation, as well as through our texts. So both of these texts, the burning bush, and then also in Luke 14, part of that is that Jesus' instructions are to give up your possessions and follow. And so in both cases, there's an invitation to kind of loosen our ties to the stuff that we have around us. And then also in both of the texts, there is an element of asking questions. And so that's another way that we can prepare to ask questions and to really approach with some humility and prepare to be transformed throughout this season. So that's our first week. And then in week 2, we move to listen for justice. So our texts for the second week are the Exodus text from Exodus 5 about the Israelites being told that, or rather the slaves in Egypt being told that they need to make bricks, but they're not going to be given straw to make the bricks anymore. And so there's this issue that they have to make the same number of bricks, but they don't have all the raw materials as they did before. And then the Luke text is the parable of the lost sheep and the lost coin. And so in both, there is an element of justice. And so the theme, as we think about listening for justice, we might be thinking about during the season, lifting up the voices of the people and the creatures and the air, land, and water who don't normally get a voice at the table or a place at the table. So that can be one of the ways that we might be able to listen for the season to those voices that don't always get heard. We might also be listening in the news. I see in the chat the idea of listening to the news and not tuning out, but listening for the way that our environment is changing. In this case, one idea might be to focus on people who are who are displaced from their homes because of some environmental issue. And indeed, there are all kinds of challenges about the way the media handles some of this. And still, there is the invitation to listen to the ways that changes to our environment, to our climate, are affecting God's people. And of course, always coming back to that, listening for God's voice through the voice of creation as well. And thinking back to the idea of the economy of God. One way that it might tie in with the Luke text is that the economy of God is, of course, based on the love that we have for the one who was lost, rather than on some kind of profit margin. So that would be some ideas for week 2. And again, there's lots of resources here that will pull out some of those ideas as well. In week 3, we move to listen and learn. Listen and learn involves 2 texts. The one from Exodus is where the Pharaoh finally says, okay, go. And so the people depart with their unleavened bread, and it doesn't have time to rise. And then in Luke 16, the parable of the dishonest manager. So in this case, there may be some specific concepts or new things that the especially in adult ed kinds of settings might be interesting or valuable to put forward. One thing that can sometimes be new to folks is the idea of a stabilization wedge. So I'm going to put a link in the chat. It's a simulation that I've used frequently as we're starting to, oops, that is not the right link, sorry. Try that again. I will, I don't know why it didn't work.
Laura, I can pop it in there. No worries.
Okay, cool. I think I've got it, but yeah, thanks, Richenda. There we go. So, oh, now you're looking at it. Let me go back to where we were before. Okay. So the idea of a stabilization wedge is the idea that there are technologies, there are solutions that have been identified that will help us to reduce emissions. And as we start to imagine what those are and start to commit ourselves to using them in community, not just one person lowering a carbon footprint, but countries and coalitions of countries, that we can actually start to make a real difference in the environmental impacts that we're seeing. And so that may be something, a learning piece that may be helpful for this week. So as we're kind of thinking about the listen and learn idea, there are all kinds of things that may be helpful as we're moving through this, but really thinking about that idea of the Pharaoh saying it's time for you to go now to Moses and the Israelites because of his learning about the power of God through listening to creation and really through the destruction of the plagues. And so that might be a tie-in for the idea of listen and learn, but then also the idea of that parable of the dishonest manager and being faithful with what God has entrusted to us. And that can be a learning experience as well. So a couple of possibilities there for week 3. Week 4, and I know this is a lot of me talking, I apologize. I hope it's helpful as you start to get your mind around what some of these themes can be. But in week 4, we have listen for leadership. And so this would be a great opportunity if your church has a green team or an ongoing project in terms of reducing footprint or shifting energy uses or any kind of advocacy that the green team is engaged in. This would be a great time to be highlighting that local leadership. Also, if there are local issues that are important to your particular context, this is a great point to really call out that local leadership. If that's not true in your context, this is also a great point to lift up the leadership of other people as well. Possibly for adult ed kinds of contexts, there could be book studies, but there's also lots of leadership. One of the things that we often find with environmental degradation is that it has an unequitable impact on low-income communities, and especially communities that are led by Black, Indigenous, and people of color. And so lifting up some of those leaders can be really powerful during this season as well, especially on this Leadership Sunday. So Wenjira Matai is the daughter of the Nobel Peace Prize winner Wangari Maathai, who was responsible for the Greenbelt movement. And Wenjira is now doing a lot of work with sustainable development. That can be a really interesting leader to lift up. Or on Richenda was talking about the Interfaith Power and Light movement earlier, and there's some wonderful resources that are available through our local IPLs as well as through the national IPL. So I would direct you their way as well. In terms of leadership, let me just check the time. I think I'm doing okay. There are also lots of ways that we might listen to the voice of creation for leadership as well. One really recent story that I thought was just fascinating was as we're thinking about coral reefs and the bleaching that we're seeing around coral reefs, there was a story about how spinner dolphins are actually leading the way to start identifying ways that we can start remediating climate or the effects of bleaching at coral reefs, which I thought was just remarkable. And not necessarily their actions would be our actions, but still lifting up those stories where even within the non-human parts of creation, we're starting to see leadership and examples for good news stories. So that's kind of a fun, right? I'm hoping that you're sharing, that you're seeing the right thing. Okay, Jenny's nodding. Good news. I just looked at what was highlighted on my screen and it doesn't look quite the way I expected to. All right, so then I think we're almost to the week 5 here. Week 5 will be the first Sunday of October, which is World Communion Sunday. It's also the Sunday that's closest to St. Francis Day, if that is something that your congregation celebrates. Oftentimes that comes along with the blessing of the animals. So there's lots of stuff going on this Sunday that, of course, you'll be picking and choosing between, or possibly having a grand celebration and recognizing a lot of the things. But the theme for the week is listen and be filled. The stories are the quail and the manna being given to the Israelites. And then in Luke, we have a text where we have a slave owner who has been asked the question by Jesus, if your slaves do everything you tell them to, do you invite them to the table? And the expectation is the answer would be no, they just did what I told them. I don't invite them to the table. But then the question is, well, then why does God invite us to the table? Why are we invited to this table? Even though what we're doing is not even what we're commanded to do, even though what we're doing is not even being stewards of the land that's been entrusted to us. And so we have this idea of being invited to the table, being filled with quail and manna, if we're looking at the Exodus text. And so really listening to that idea of all are invited to God's table. We're all invited to this table. If we're celebrating World Communion Sunday that day, we're invited to be filled at the table. And yet there's this question of, why is God inviting us to the table? What is it that we are invited then to do at the same time? So kind of a juxtaposition maybe between the idea of obedience and the idea of reward. And so that might be something that you can play with. And one idea that I had there, yes, indeed, because we are God's children. Thank you. There's a movie that came out in 2019 called Honeyland. It's a Macedonian documentary that highlights some of these kinds of themes that may be helpful, again, if you have adult ed context or if you're looking for inspiration from a media source. So that was a lot to wrap your mind around. And I'm sorry, it kind of probably felt like a fire hose to run through the weeks at that pace. But I want to take a breath here. And Richenda, we're going to get ready for our first poll so that we can have the opportunity to think through any ways that we are feeling called to listen, since that is our season's theme, to listen to the voice of creation. What are some of the ways that we might engage with that idea of listening? So Richenda, when you're ready.
Are you ready?
Okay. So,
all right, here we go.
And when you see the poll, you are welcome to choose as many as apply. I don't think it's a single choice only. I think you can choose as many as you would like.
Oh, it's interesting that some of us are going to really struggle with the non-lectionary texts. They include the gospel texts are Luke that are lectionary, so you can definitely lean in for that. And if you want to brainstorm around, where the natural pieces are of that, because that can be hard for congregations. It can.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So for our caller, the 2 questions are, in what ways do you see your congregation's worship as an opportunity to listen? And then the second one is, how is the season of creation likely to stretch your congregation? So we've had a couple people responding that it'll be a stretch to look at non-lectionary texts. All right. We have about 9 people who have submitted that poll. Are there others who are still working on it and want to submit in a minute? Might take a minute.
All right. I'm going to count my head to 5, and then I'm going to hit the end poll.
Hang on, Richenda.
Oh, okay. I'll wait.
Linda was trying to say something. Linda, are you good? Okay, she's good.
All right, are we ready?
I think we're
poll?
ready. Yeah.
Okay.
All right. So I'm going to share the results. So hopefully you can see that. And so we have lots of different ways that we listen, and it's really kind of evenly spread out, except for when I worship alone, I can listen better. Only received 1 vote, and we listen in a way that's not listed here. Only received 2 votes. And then for what's going to be the stretch, listening to voices that we don't speak in ways we normally hear will be the one that most people say is the stretch. And then we have a tie for second place. Listening for God moving in the natural world will be a stretch, and listening for God beyond the church will be a stretch. So yeah, thank you for naming those, for choosing those, and for engaging with it. I think it'll be really exciting to hear what happens in your churches, and to hear how this all takes shape. So I think we were going to take a few minutes here if you have questions and you would like to address some of those before we move into breakout rooms. We have time for that. You're welcome to raise your hand using the Zoom reaction, or to raise your hand, your actual physical hand if your camera is on. And then we'll just invite you to mute yourself so that you can ask your question. We'll start with Andrew.
Hey, everybody. Glad to see many of my friends here. It's great to be in the same call with you. And something that's really on my mind now is the coming midterm elections in the US. So much is riding on what happens in November. And I don't know if this fits in or could be fit in with the theme of listening to creation. I'd love to see any ideas that people have, but it's something that will impact many generations to come. We are now at the point where so much of God's creation is breaking down, both climate and otherwise. So I'd love to get some ideas about how to bring that in.
Yeah, thank you, Andrew. That's an important point. And I think a lot of times we have to do a little bit of a dance in terms of how much politics we want to be sharing in our churches. And it's oftentimes a challenge for some congregations, whereas others are definitely right on that train. So again, I was hoping to provide a few examples of things that might be issues that would be easier to, as a starting place for congregations to engage with, but absolutely encouraging people to be engaged in the process and looking for ways that their faith compels them to stand up for the rights of creation and for the natural world is absolutely appropriate. And Jenny wanted to add something. Yeah, go ahead, Jenny.
Yeah, well, I just noticed there's a really clear tie to the Listen for Leadership week with that thought about elections, and without you don't have to go too far to be able to talk about the many ways in which leadership manifests in our lives, in our workplaces, in our communities, in our cities, in our governments. And so when we have a voice in making a decision about who is in leadership, we should be thinking about these values. You don't have to go deep into the politics to draw that leadership connection. And I think for some folks, it is a new idea to think, oh, I should be thinking about these environmental values when I have a chance to make a decision about a leader, and I should find out their position. So I think that might be a way to do for it to be doable, even if you're not actively discussing politics in your congregation, or you don't wish to discuss it in worship.
Thank you. And Richenda put in the chat, one way to bring the heart of the issues in the Sunday teaching is about what stories to highlight. You can talk about folks in Sudan or the lack of water in the West. So definitely bringing up some of those issues. Thank you. Yes. And Linda has her hand up. Linda, you're muted. Are you able to unmute?
Yes, now I'm here. So I was hoping that, and I continue to hope that there is something powerful here in creation care that can be a healing force with the upcoming fracture that's taking place in our denomination, where there can be respect and caring for everyone, regardless of opinion, and not be distracted by what our core focus needs to be. So I'm looking for that in all of these things, and I see potential for that. So that's all I'm going to say on that subject. But anyway.
Thank you, Linda. Yes, I think you're absolutely right that there are a lot of different reasons that people are distracted and divided right now, and that our common listening to the call from creation is a way that can bring us back together. And so my hope for healing matches yours. Thank you. Yes. And Richenda is pointing again to Interfaith Power and Light that has resources for bringing political issues into congregations. Thank you. Are there other questions that you have at this time?
There's one. Do other areas of the country have Creation Care Alliance also? Because we have Creation Care Alliance of Western North Carolina, and they are starting to come up with some very good ideas, just simple things about how to talk to politicians, how to talk to people about the issues that you care about. And you can also look at other environmental groups to see what they are doing, because we have several around here that are also giving. Some are very activist and sometimes very forceful, too much so for our goals, but we can adopt what they have and try to get the word across to other people. And I just want to say, when we first started our Creation Care ministry a year and a half ago, frequently I'd find out from our then lead pastor that some people would come running and saying, what the heck are they doing? And we're having a lot less of that now. People are starting to listen, to care, to see that, no, we're not throwing it in their faces and telling them they're bad because they use, non-compostable plastic plates or something. We're going with the positive messages all the time.
Yeah, thank you, Christy. That's really important. And I completely affirm looking and seeing what the local resources are in your area. There are absolutely organizations, Ecumenical, Interfaith, as well as United Methodist organizations across the country and beyond that can help us to really connect with the issues that are happening in our local places.
Actually, one other thing that we did totally by accident, no, it was the Holy Spirit guiding us. We now have, I live in Transylvania County, for real, that's its name, but we have a Transylvania Creation Care Fellowship. So far, just 5 churches, different denominations, but we're hoping to get 3 more soon. And when we have larger projects like bringing solar presentations to the community, we all band together and work together to publicize and all the rest. And it's working well because we find out what the other denominations are doing in this field also.
Very good. Thank you. Yeah, that's, I think, Richenda, go ahead.
Yeah, I think definitely triangulating is great, right? Like, hey, this other conference, if anybody wants a conference to compare to, North Carolina is doing some wonderful things, and others as well. So you just being able to say that helps give you legitimacy. So you don't have to fight people in congregation or on a Sunday morning. You can say, well, I noticed this is happening in North Carolina or wherever it is. And it lets you do that sort of graceful dodge. But also people, as they're listening to, they're sometimes people process out loud. And so when they come at you sort of verbally with something, oftentimes they're listening to themselves and working through those sorts of things themselves, which is great. The United Methodist Creation Justice movement too is really encouraging people to talk to their bishops. If your conference doesn't have a task force, ours doesn't, or there's no conversation with the bishop, ours doesn't have one, they can actually initiate that. And so definitely not coming at you like, I got it. Nope, I don't have it here. But we're working towards it. And so that's the invitation here. And it can be done gently. And you don't have to feel like it's all or nothing. We're all in this together, holding hands, walking along. So, yeah.
Yeah, thank you. You'll hear, if you're listening closely, there's a couple different terms people are using: creation care and environmental justice, and they're not exactly the same as each other, but it's important to kind of recognize that there are some terms that are important to tease apart, and so I just wanted to name that as well. But yeah, thank you. Other questions or comments or things you want to talk about before we head into breakout rooms? Oh, Jenny, yeah.
Here we go. One other thing I just wanted to lift up. Am I muted or not? I'm getting the muted thing. Okay, I'm good, right? Okay. I just also wanted to note, in the spirit of pointing toward good work happening all around and how it surrounds our churches, the 12 of the agencies and commissions of the United Methodist Church, like the ones you know, like Global Ministries and Church of Society, United Women in Faith, and Discipleship, the many of the agencies that you work with have made a commitment to net zero emissions by 2050. And so we are earnestly looking at where we are generating emissions through our ministries, because we recognize that if we are causing damage to God's creation in the midst of doing our ministry, that's a problem. So I just threw a link in there in case you want to learn more about that. But it's another thing to point to say that the church is really moving in this direction in a united way, and we all can join in and be part of it.
Thank you. That's really helpful. All right. Anything else before we open up some breakout rooms? All right. Richenda, are you so that you can post the prompts for the breakout rooms in the chat for us? I think she'll.
Yes, I can. Hold on. Let me bring it up.
All right.
Okay. And then wait, where are we? I say yes, and then I have to find them. Prompts. Here we go. And do you want me to just post the whole ones?
Yeah,
that'd be all in there. Okay,
yeah.
You got it.
Thank you. So you'll have about 15 minutes in your breakout rooms, and you'll have about 5 people in each room. And our hope is that you'll introduce yourselves first, and then to decide what it would be most helpful for your group to talk about. But one thing that we haven't talked about yet here is what you might do in the worship space or in your teaching space. Is there a desire to have a burning bush in there? And what might that look like? There are some resources in the seasonofcreation.org about building a burning bush, or having a space where you actually take shoes off as you go up to preach or go up to encounter this area. So, but what kind of banners would you use? What colors would you use? Are there ritual actions that you would want to do? We've provided a couple of liturgies for communion, but if you have other thoughts about blessing of the animals, things like that, that would be an opportunity to talk about it there too. And then if you're feeling like those things that are going to stretch you are going to be challenges that might be hurdles to overcome, this might be a way to engage with some other people about ways that we can start to think about how we can invite people into this season. So if there are challenges that you see as real barriers, you have a group that can help you to start to think about that. And then whichever one of those you choose to talk about or something else, we'd love it if you could pick someone who's willing to share out from your group as we come back in about 15 minutes. Any questions on what we're going to be doing in breakout rooms? All right, so I will go ahead and open the rooms, and if you would join it when you see the invitation. Hi, we're the 5th breakout room, so we ended up with the fewest number of people. Sorry about that. I would love to hear from each of you, sort of your role and what you're thinking at this point.
Want me to go? Okay, I'm Nancy Gazai, and I live in Pineville, North Carolina, which is right outside of Charlotte. I was in the North Carolina conference and know Pat Watkins quite well, and he helped us do a green team, which is now in its 4th year in Southport, North Carolina. I'm really proud of all that they're doing since I left. So when I came to the Western North Carolina conference, we had just started the Western North Carolina conference creation care team. We're about 2 years old now. So I do the Metro District. And what I do is, as a volunteer, I just go to different churches and present what the United Methodist Church's creation care is and ways that they can become involved. A lot of them are choosing to do, we have the Green Church Initiative. And so we have a lot of churches that are doing that first because they're finding that that's what people want the most. And from there, then we're branching out. So it's exciting. We've come a long way. And I was just listening to this because I haven't done a season of creation. Now in our other church, we did do, we didn't call it that, but we did a series of sermons and studies on creation care. So I just wanted to see what this was about so I could share it with the other churches.
Nice. Thank you.
Yeah, I'm sorry. So I'm Marty Swords Harrell. I'm pastor at First United Methodist in Oneonta, New York, which is right smack in the middle of the state.
Very where that is.
You do? What?
I do. I'm from the Thousand Islands, so.
Oh, okay. Yep. Well, we have two colleges in town. There's a state university and a small private former Lutheran school. So we have a, heavy academic kind of background, and we are a green congregation. We did a green covenant about 3 years ago. And the other thing we have done the season of creation. This is only my 4th year here, but we've done it every year that I've been here. And usually we just use the liturgies and the non-lectionary texts from, is it seasonofcreation.com or org? I forget, but it's the ecumenical one. So
They both are. Yeah, it's so interesting. So the Seasons of the Spirit published curriculum is coordinated with seasonofcreation.com. And then the ones that are sort of more freely available are the seasonsofcreation.org. And this year they didn't have a lot of worship materials in the.
No, I was surprised.
Which is why we did this, because
thank you.
Like everybody's having to create their own. Why not resources?
And I also noticed they did have texts in there, but there was a lot of the prophets that we're already doing this summer. And the other thing we usually do is hold off on the Native American Ministries offering until the middle of this season, because it seems to tie in a lot better. As you know, Nancy, I'm sure that we live in the middle of the former Iroquois Confederacy, so lots of Native American resources and background, and we're very, very aware that we live on former Native lands, as we do all across the country. But anyway, so I'll be working with some folks from our green team to make this season happen, which will be a huge pleasure.
Very good. Well, I'm glad that you could both be here.
It's a very rural conference. It's a huge conference, but and it's fairly new. It's only been in existence a little over 10 years. So I don't think there is a creation care team, although I'm on the social holiness team, which is what that group would relate to, I'm sure. So as far as I know, we don't have a creation care team, which is ridiculous.
Yeah, sometimes when we have these gatherings, we can hear, oh, that's a good idea. Maybe we can try something like that. Yeah.
Although I am on the executive team of the New York State Council of Churches. And we do a lot ecumenically about probably, especially trying to get all kinds of legislation through the New York State Legislature on these issues.
Oh, yeah.
So that's one of our big work pushes, all the time.
Nice. So Nancy, did you say that you're the pastor at a church and also you go around from church to church presenting? No,
I'm a lay person.
Okay.
Woo.
Yeah, but I, Pat Watkins, of course, he's such an inspiration. And he and I talked, because I grew up, my dad was an environmentalist before that was, word. I grew up on the St. Lawrence River, and he, that was his passion, his love. And he, 50 years ago, when Earth Day and all that was going around, they started an organization now it's Save the River, but at that time it was another because they were noticing the pollution that was coming into the St. Lawrence River. So,
well, I'm curious, it sounds like both of your congregations will be open to the idea of season of creation, although Nancy, you said that you haven't done it before, so that's sort of interesting. But I'm curious if you see challenges or barriers in the way of starting this year. Marty, you were saying that usually they're lectionary based. Is that going to be something that is hard?
I don't think it'll be a big deal. It's I think they're very open to anything having to do with the environment. Usually goes over really well. We always have a very big Earth Day Sunday in the spring as well. And that's usually, they usually say, don't even come near, we're going to do all this. So
oh, nice.
the United Methodist women, now they're called the United Women of Faith, take care of that completely without me.
Nice.
Fine, because it's usually the Sunday after Easter. Or often.
Our pastor doesn't usually follow the lectionary.
Oh,
In
okay.
fact, she's done a real interesting thing. We've done the national parks this summer related to the Psalms, and each
very
Sunday
cool.
we visit a different national park.
Oh my God.
And because she's been to several of them,
Right.
but she also takes a psalm and relates it to, the national park.
Wow.
And then, we've seen some video clips and she has pictures. And so that's really been
so
interesting.
fun.
And actually a lot of people have really related to it because it's something that most of them have visited or have visually seen in some text. And so that leads right into Season of Creation because she's already,
Yeah.
kind of visited that.
I guess the only challenge might be the weather, although now, of course, things are warming, but often as you will probably remember, Nancy, by the first Sunday of October, it's really too cold to do like a blessing of the animals outside. They've been doing it more virtually the last couple of years where, if it might be already snowing by then. We've just had people take pictures of their pets and then just put them up on a screen. And other times in the past, I used to always have people bring all their animals, which can be a real challenge. but it's also sometimes the most favorite service of the whole year.
Right. Yeah.
Forget.
It seems like some congregations have space to do it indoors during worship, and some
we don't really
have it outdoors and have it sort of be drive-through.
Exactly.
Saturday or something. So options there.
I guess there was a huge hullabaloo in some congregation. No, it was a scientist in England this week who called the domestic house cat an invasive species. Oh dear.
Those are fighting words.
They were absolutely, because they came originally from Egypt. They were like considered sacred animals and stuff. So they really are not indigenous to the British Isles. So you don't want to get into that.
They're there now.
You really don't want to get into that. And then somebody wrote back, I think humans are also an invasive species. Yeah, you want to get your dog and cat people fighting against each other. No, that's probably not a good strategy when it comes to that.
Yeah. Well, do you have ideas about how you would organize the worship space then, in terms of whether a burning bush would be something that would be fun to do?
We will definitely do that. We'll probably bring in we have an enormous ceiling, like 50-foot ceiling. So we'll probably bring in some very good size tree, like, I don't know if it'll be a whole tree or something, but yeah, I think the burning bush thing would really work well.
Nice.
Yeah.
And then I don't know if you saw it because it hasn't been out very long, but in the worship materials, there's also a children's idea for each week.
Good.
Children's times.
Okay.
And each week there's something to listen to. So a conch shell or a little acorn cap or whatever from creation. And so it might be fun to have the children sort of gather around the bush and get to listen to whatever it is that week. And
absolutely. That would work well.
Another way that is kind of engaging.
Yeah. I'm glad you're doing, there's a communion liturgy in there too. That's important.
Yeah, there's two, one for the September, one for the October
Okay.
days. Just, you know, assuming a lot of people do first Sunday of the month, but of course you can use it
Right.
whenever.
Now,
Yeah.
do you think next year, though, you would do this a little bit earlier? Because I know some churches,
Right.
you know, they're, especially in the Charlotte area, because there are still some large churches.
Sure.
And, you know, they wouldn't do this now because of
Too late.
they've already planned,
Yeah.
you know, through October. So
Sure.
that's just a suggestion if it could be done
Yeah,
a little
for
bit
sure.
earlier.
Yeah,
Right.
that makes sense.
Yeah, we were thinking like May. We
Mhm.
thought of like just doing a quick whatever we could pull together for this year when we realized that there wasn't a lot in the seasonofcreation.org materials. But once we started talking and saying, oh, well, it would have been so much better if we'd had more time to plan it and more voices included and all that. And so we were thinking about, you know, maybe trying to get it put together in May instead of this time of year. Does that seem early enough?
Yeah, that would be fine.
Yes, I think that'd be great. I
Okay.
agree with Marty.
Yeah, definitely. All right, so I downloaded the wrong thing then. This thing, what I'm holding up right here is the other one, right?
That's the other one.
Okay.
Oh, well, hang on one second.
dear.
Hold it up again.
Oh dear, I killed a bunch of trees for no reason.
It might be the right one.
Okay.
Does it have a burning bush somewhere on it?
Oh yeah, it has a celebration of creation.
Okay,
But
then it's the right one.
you think it is? Okay.
Yeah. Yeah. The other one doesn't have the burning bush theme going on.
Oh,
They
okay.
do they do like Ocean Sunday, Mountain Sunday, Forest.
Right. Yeah, because I remember the first year I did that and I said, I was new, you know, in
Yeah.
2018, and it was Mountain Sunday. I said, well, take your new pastor for a walk. Because we are surrounded by mountains in the middle of the Catskills.
Nice.
So a lot of people took me up. I went on like 7 hikes that week. It was so fun.
Oh,
And
Wow.
an 87-year-old lady I could not keep up with because she's a member of the Adirondack Mountain Club.
Okay.
And there's this big rock right behind the church. It's called Table Rock. And you pretty much have to walk straight up to get to it. She was like, I was like,
Wow.
oh my gosh, it was wonderful.
That's a great idea. We could have
Yeah,
that invitation even with without Mountain Sunday. We could still have the invitation to take
Sure.
you on a hike.
I think that's a great idea. It's a good way for me to get to know the area, you know, because a lot of hikes are not really marked, or they're not like in a state park where they have marked trails or whatever.
Right.
It's a beautiful area, though.
Oh, it totally is. Yeah.
Nice. All right. Well, any other ideas for worship space design, or how you would set things up differently to sort of mark off the season?
I'm not sure if I've done enough looking into the scriptures and stuff to be able to
Sure.
figure that out yet.
All right. Well, it's almost time to head back, but I'm wondering if we have someone who's willing to share out any of the ideas we've been talking about.
Go ahead, Nancy. I think you got better ideas than I do, definitely.
Let's see what everybody else has first, and I might go ditto.
That's right.
All right. Nancy will be our Sharon. Okay, I think I have to leave to be able to close the breakout rooms for everyone else.
Okay.
I'll let you two chat for another minute.
Thank you. It was nice to talk with you.
Yeah, you too. Wow, you all came back so quickly, just in a flash.
It forced us out, Laura. So we
Yeah, it's because we weren't done. We weren't done.
I'm sorry.
We weren't done either.
Well, I'm so excited to hear what some of the great ideas you were talking about were. So we had 5 groups, and I'd love to hear someone from each of the groups. I think that I can pick on somebody from each of the groups, and then they can tell us if you had a different volunteer. But I think Paul was in our room number 1. Paul, were you the volunteer, or was there someone else?
I was trying to volunteer someone else, but I'll go ahead. I think one of the ideas that came up in our group is that it doesn't have to happen only in September. If this is too late for you, plan a year from now, or be ready to step in if your pastor happens to, have to be absent, and unplanned absent. Be ready to step in with a message. Also, to look ahead throughout, if you're a lectionary cycle church, to look throughout the 3-year lectionary cycle and find times that would be especially appropriate for this message, and then offer that to your worship planning team or to your pastor, as a way to to be prepared and to spread the message out. I remember thinking when I was first in ministry that there's sort of no reason that we should only be talking about stewardship in October or November. It's a year-round practice, and the same thing with creation care. There's an organization, we were talking about, creationcarealliance.org, that has some resources and links on it. And also one called letallcreationpraise.org, which is a year-round lectionary resource, and it lifts up themes and hymns and prayers that are appropriate year-round for this theme. So I think that's...
Thank you. Wonderful. And in group 2, we had, let's see, Andrew, you were the first name in group 2. Were you the volunteer? Would you like to volunteer someone else from your group?
Yeah, I'll give it my best shot, because many ideas were flying around and it was hard to take all the notes. But number one, I would say that a challenge for our particular congregation is that we have many people who have a little bit of time to help with a Creation Care Sunday worship service, but nobody who really has a lot. So we're spreading it around to many people. But of course, that takes more coordination. One challenge we have here also, speaking for myself, is living in a climate haven. Here in Western New York, close to Buffalo, we are not feeling any negative effects from the climate crisis. We do have some other problems, but people generally feel pretty well insulated. So we have to appeal more to people's love for God's creation in general, rather than protecting ourselves and the things we know. Also, I was really interested to hear someone say that that animal blessing, the blessing of the animals, is a huge draw for many congregations. Very popular. I had never tried that. I'm not a pet lover, so it's something pretty foreign to me, but I'm certainly willing to try that out. And so just a small item there related to that is that for dog poop, don't be afraid to replace plastic with compostable bags when you're disposing those elements. Every little bit helps, and hopefully it gets people thinking about the environment.
Thank you. Wonderful. And yeah, we have encouragement in the chat there. So room 3, Richenda was in that room. Richenda, are you the reporter, or would you like to volunteer someone?
Sonia, do you want to share what we talked about? we had this flurry as we were taken out, so you can refuse.
Thanks. Okay, so we were a very diverse group, and we didn't coalesce on anything that I recall. We did come at, for one thing, we didn't seem to have an overall topic to talk about. And I think that would have helped to have something a little bit more, that brought us a little more into focus. But it was an interesting discussion, and a lot of people are not really thinking of Creation Care Month. They're not thinking of it as the season of creation, which is the month of September, I might say. And that's all I have to say, really.
Thank you. And then Naomi, I think, was also in your group, and she had put a link in the chat of a photo. Naomi, would you like to say anything else about that?
Yes. Are you hearing me?
Yes.
Okay, so one of the questions, you did give us a list of questions to talk about, but we didn't do that. But one of the questions was, do you have any ideas for banners and stuff? And so I put a link in there for you to see. You can click on that, and it's a Google picture. You should be able to just open it up, and it's actually more than a picture. It's a video, and I didn't have anything to do with this, but some other people did it, where this one lady had a back for a quilt, and then they hung it up, and then the librarian put out all these children's books about nature. And they were like, when you first go in the church. So, and that was for Earth Day. Oh, thank you, Jenny.
Oh,
Yeah.
that's nice.
Nice.
And yeah. So, and I mean, even, I don't know, how could anybody be mad about that or anything? It was just there. And there were like all these books you could read to kids, and there's a cookbook. There was adult books and everything. And that was from our church library. I don't know if most of you have nice church libraries or not, but you wouldn't even have to have that many books out. You could have like a couple books out.
Yeah, thank you. That seems really exciting and an interesting idea to engage both the children and to start to expand the creativity of the adults as well who walk through that space. So thank you. Anything else from group 3?
I don't know if Sarah wanted to do. One of the things is that our group didn't have a pastor in it in terms of leading worship. And so a lot of our conversation was, from introduction to like, what are the challenges? Like, how do we encourage our pastors, give our pastors permission, get them to be brave, or even just listen to us, and the frustration with how hard it is, even after 15 years at it. Really not getting yet to a place where this is something that's just happening in the church. And so the encouragement around that, and also folks spoke about ways that they had found that might be helpful, sharing tips on how that can help getting the pastor resourcing from the United Methodist Church, I think is great, Laura. This might be a good way to triangulate that. But a lot of frustration of, if you're not the pastor and you don't get to set the season of creation, how can you bring this topic forward and really have it happen in your church?
Yeah, thank you for naming that. That's an important consideration. And I just want to lift up all of the people in that group who were brainstorming around that. I think that's where it starts, and to really continue to lift that up. Yeah, Naomi?
So, what I'd like to say is, we weren't pastors, and Richenda brought up asking the SPRC to give the pastor funding to get books, and that has never crossed my mind. So that was something new to me.
Nice. All right. Thank you. Great ideas, group 3.
I didn't even know it was possible. That's why it hadn't crossed my mind.
We have another hand, Barb.
Yeah, something that just occurred to me. I didn't mention it in our group, but something that has been kind of an in for me in our church is I'm an earthkeeper, and what we did was look at conserving energy and sort of setting us up in the future for possibly getting solar panels installed. But because you save money when you save energy and are more efficient, that's kind of been, I think that's been, and it's just been a series of little tiny baby steps over the last several years, but that's been kind of the place that support has been built. And I don't know, I think it's been 4 years since I went to Earthkeepers training. This is the first year that I feel like I'm getting any traction at all with Season of Creation, but baby steps are good.
Absolutely. Baby steps are so important. Thank you, Barb, for naming that. Let's go to group 4. Jenny, this was the group that you were in. Was there a reporter from your group, or?
We did not manage to identify one, but I'll just share very briefly that we went in a lot of different directions. And I think what we sort of, the great theme was that there are a lot of ways to decorate a space that, and then some folks are drawn to a literal expression of a message. Some folks are drawn to something more interpretive. We talked about ways that people could participate in the creation or decoration of the space, either before worship or during worship. We talked about the use of PowerPoints as one tool. We talked about art. We just kind of like, and it was just talking with different people from different groups or different backgrounds, just seeing like, well, where do their minds go and what attracts them or not. Did I catch it, Doug? Is there anything else there? And Kia, if you're able to hear, is there anything else you want us to remember?
No, I think you captured it well. And a little discussion on the lectionary, how important the lectionary is to use or not. And yeah, we just threw out some different ideas. We had different perspectives.
Yeah, it was good. Thank you.
Thank you. And then group 5, Nancy, I think you were the reporter from group 5.
There, got myself unmuted. Yes, there were only 3 of us, which was great. And of course, 2 of us have a love for New York State. Shout out to the other people that are from New York State. And we talked about, ways that we could use seasons of creation. We felt that the burning bush, even though I did see a comment about the burning bush might not be the best.
Yes. I'm going to come and say.
Figure out what's best for your church. You certainly could do other symbols as well. We talked about also that next year we would hope that the planning could be done like in May, because there's a couple of churches that would not do it because they're planned, through October. We did talk about that, and we just shared what was going on in our lives in our church community as far as creation care goes. And is there anything else that you'd like to add that was in the group?
Go ahead.
I think you got it.
Yeah, I think one of the other things that Marty, you brought up was the idea of that the Native American Awareness Sunday can be moved into the middle of the season, and that might be a way to also tie in with some of the local Native tribes that are in the area as well. So that's another idea that I hadn't thought of before, but thank you. All right. Well, anyone have anything else that they wanted to add from the breakout rooms to share with everyone else? All right. Well, we're closing in on 5:30, so we definitely want to be moving towards adjourning here at 5:30. Richenda, do you have the emails for the 3 of us that you can put in the chat? If you do have other ideas or other resources that you'd like to share, or you're inspired to create something and you'd like to let us know about it, we'd love to be able to share it with everyone. So Richenda is going to put our emails in the chat, and you're welcome to email us and be in touch as you are planning your own season, or as Paul's group said, whatever season of the year it is that you'd like to do a season of creation. It can be anytime, right? Season of creation can be Advent. Nothing wrong with that. So yeah, there's all kinds of opportunities there. So let us know how it's going.
Do you want me to launch that second poll, or?
Yes, absolutely.
Okay.
So we have one more poll for you. Again, it's 2 questions, and we'd love to just get a little bit of feedback about how this was.
While y'all are finishing this poll, I just want to say that this workshop and these incredible resources were born out of a conversation that started less than a month ago about what are we going to do about season of creation? Who's got something? And Reverend Laura really took a leap in jumping in and coordinating this with awesome help from Richenda and Kathy, who couldn't be here tonight, and encouragement from Paul. So I just want to commend these leaders and just say, like, look at what people can do. Look what can happen. Even if you're just starting now, there's a lot of time to make some cool stuff happen. And now you've got an extra boost because of the work of these folks. So I think with the energy that was behind doing this, there are going to be more resources in the future. So yeah, I just want to celebrate that.
Yeah, thank you so much, Jenny. And thank you for your help in getting this out there into the networks. And want to give a shout out to Paul as well, who has some images in the resources. So thank you, Paul. And thank you, everyone. And absolutely, next year, we will start earlier and we will include more voices. We will include more diverse voices from our tradition. We talked about whether it was just too late to do anything, and we decided it's never too late to remove some barriers and get an invitation to participate out there. And it's not going to be perfect, but we've learned so much from getting to talk with all of you tonight and getting to work together. So thank you for being part of the process this year. And we look forward to doing even better next year.
I want to encourage you too to sign up for the newsletter from the creationjustice.org. And there's also creation justice tips that come out of there. And if you have an idea for a resource, like when we were talking in our group, there's like ideas about, oh, we could maybe do this or maybe do that. And I mean, you know, if you're thinking of it, other people are going to be wanting to think about those things too. And so the creation justice movement, this is what they're all about, thinking about what people need. Trying to resource and encourage and get together and do this work. So don't be shy about connecting with that group.
Yeah. And speaking of connecting, Christy's asked a question in the chat about whether it's possible to share everyone's emails for the participants who are here now with each other. So I want to let everyone answer that question. Do you want me to send an email that's not blind carbon copy to all of you, and so that you can see each other's emails and actually respond to each other? Or do you prefer something else? I'm seeing a few thumbs up. If you do not want to be on that list, you're welcome to send me a direct message in the chat, or to respond to one of the emails that I've sent you and let me know that you do not want to be included in that. But otherwise, I will go ahead and take a screenshot so I can remember who all's here right now. And
if we're looking for building community to the United Methodist Creation Justice Movement, I know I keep saying that's long too. All of our church names and conference names are so long. They're going to be doing a movement cafe. So an opportunity for people just to gather and talk and get to know each other so that you don't feel so lonely. I know sometimes the work feels so lonely. So that's an option coming up too. If you don't get those emails today, that's okay, because there's going to be, this whole movement is building lots of relationships. Earth Keepers, what Jenny does, my goodness, the relationships she's been able to build. So there's all of that is in the upward direction.
All right. Thank you, Richenda. And I think we're ready to end the poll. We've got 10 people responding to the poll again. And so I'll share those results. We have people really excited about a variety of different things that happened tonight. And then most likely to share would be the resources themselves. And so thank you for responding and helping us to know what is most helpful to you, and for being willing to share your own ideas, because you can see here that that is something that, at least for someone, was the best part of the night. So thank you so much for all of that. I think we are about ready to draw this to a close. So I'm going to give it to Jenny. Jenny, would you close us with a prayer?
I'd be glad to. Let's find our feet on the ground, feel our bodies in our seats, take a deep breath, recognizing that God is in our midst, and our midst is really big because this group spans across the country. And yet here we are together. Let us pray. Creator God, I give you thanks for the creativity, the vision, the commitment to study of scripture, to the commitment to relationship that is manifest in this group tonight. I pray for each of these leaders that they will be able to use these resources in their ministries, regardless of what role they play in the work of caring for your creation, that they will find ways to take what they have learned here and use it as an expression of your love and your grace and your deep, deep care for the earth you have created. May we be your stewards. May we commit deeply and seriously, knowing that you are relying on us and that we are your hands and your feet in the world. Bless us, guide us, and be with us as we rest. In the name of Jesus, amen.
And
Thank you, Jenny, and thank you everyone for being with us tonight. It has been a pleasure to meet you all and to get to do this work together. So at this point, I think our work is done, unless anyone would like to stay on and chat for a little longer, but I think we're concluding the planned portion of our time. So thank you.
I want to thank Laura. I know Jenny already did that, but I want to thank Laura as well for just being the catalyst for throwing this out there. Hey, is anybody doing anything? That is so much power in that. So yay. Thank you, Laura.
thank you, Laura.
Thank you. Thank you all for being here and for being willing to just run with something crazy.
I just want to say Christ's peace with all of you as you continue in this work of ministry.
And with you.
Yes.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you to everybody.
Bye, Doug.